Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, salam sejahtera untuk kita sekalian. Yang pertama, kami mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada 4 narasumber kita. Yang pertama Dr. Leonur Safin, kemudian Dr. Denis, kemudian Bang Muhammad Maruf. Nah, tentunya ini akan menjadi satu perspektif baru kita sebagai mahasiswa di LMND dan pada umumnya melihat bahwa di dunia internasional yang memang ini perlu kita duduki dan kita diskusikan secara bersama. Yang pertama, LMND mengangkat tema dengan multipolar dalam perspektif Pancasila. Saya tidak akan terlalu banyak bicara dalam hal ini karena nanti akan keempat narasumber kita ini yang akan memboboti, yang kemudian akan memberikan perspektif yang bagi kita di eksekutif nasional maupun LMND di seluruh Indonesia. Nah, kami eksekutif nasional meminta kepada seluruh teman-teman yang hadir di Zoom ini, kita sama-sama mendengarkan para audiens agar kita bisa memahami apa yang kemudian akan nanti kita diskusikan secara bersama-sama. Terakhir kami mengucapkan sekali lagi terima kasih kepada 4 narasumber ketiga narasumber yang sudah meluangkan waktu untuk berdiskusi dan memberikan perspektif dalam hal melihat dunia di multipolar ya seperti apa yang kita akan diskusikan secara bersama-sama. Demikian mungkin itu yang dapat kami sampaikan. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you and Allah mercy and blessing. Good afternoon, Jakarta time. Indonesia for the committee and participants in Jakarta and myself in Solo. And afternoon Moscow time to speakers from Russia, the honorable guest, Dr. Leonid Safin, political expert, and Mr. Dr. Denis, doctor in political science and candidate in economic, Professor at UDN University. Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Saman, Chairman of LMND, Mbak Mila as moderator, and Mr. Zulkifar and all friends from LMND and all participants from various campus and region Indonesia. Welcome to opening the Geopolitical Academy Series 1 program, National Democratic Student League or LMND. Geopolitical Academy is a non-formal geopolitical school. We try to looking for an alternative non-mainstream. We want to gain complete understanding of the current geopolitical condition. This program is the result of a collaboration between Global Thinkers Institute or GTI. I'm the director of Global Thinkers Institute and the National Democratic Student League atau LMND or LMND. Today, we will have our first discussion entitled War, Pancasila and Multipolar Perspective. The routine discussion is the result, again, collaboration between the Global Thinker Institute and Indonesian National Student League. Discussion will be held every month. We bring in speakers from all continents, from various current and concise and in a deep theme, of course. Almost all participants, Mr. Leonid and Mr. Dennis, come from students and from various campus in Indonesia. They are still active. I hope this discussion will be followed with the enthusiasm and do not give up easily. So we have to be on time and focus. The big theme of today's discussion was studying war academically from multipolar and Pancasila perspective. So we want to try not in what's so-called mainstream perspective. We want to try to another alternative narration perspective, etc. Enjoy and keep enthusiasm and your spirit. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Current perspectives on balance of power on world stage. Next slide, please. Please, next slide. Yeah, okay, great. So when we speak about power, is not an easy thing, right? How could we measure power? Usually people say that power, A has power over B, insofar he can make B do something that B would not otherwise do, right? Then we have power in wartime and power in peacetime. Now it is more like power in wartime. Then we have different kinds of power, and here is my hierarchy, right? First of all, it's structural power. So when you create your own rules, then you have power of interdependence, when others depend on you and you could impose your will, right? Then it is hard power and soft power. And we also use the strategic culture, right? What is strategic culture? I mean, what kind of power is more appropriate for you, whether you think that soft power is better than structural power or vice versa. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I told you now, we have power in wartime. And in wartime, we have like 3 world poles, like USA, Russia, and China. According to, global firepower index, Russia is always at the second place. And then now what Russia is doing, we are the actor which structures the world politics, the new world politics. Russia has new military technologies and also the heritage of legacy, right, of the Soviet Union. What is different in wartime? So what is the difference between peacetime, time of peace, and time of war? During wartime, self-reliance is very much appreciated, especially self-reliance in strategic goods, right? Food, natural resources, energy. And Russia is rather self-reliant power, right? Let's go to the next slide, please. one of the composite indicators, I would say, of hard power, which is usually used, is composite index of national capabilities, which includes total population and urban population, iron steel production, energy consumption, and military expenditure and military personnel. So we take for each country the share of this country in the global. But it is really without any soft power, it's hard power. If you will look at these indicators, actually for 2018, the share of NATO countries was 25% of world power, while the share of Shanghai Cooperation Organization was around 36%. And it was without Iran, which joined Shanghai later. You see, and then also the factor of Turkey, because though Turkey is a member of NATO, right, is it tends to join powers as well. So I would like to say that in terms of hard power, non-Western countries, right, united within Shanghai are almost like 1.04 times stronger than NATO powers. Thus, it's very difficult to perceive it, right? But it is a fact. Next slide, please. One of analytic perspectives which I find really useful to explain what is happening now is power transition theory. It is created by Abram Argansky in the United States. So it is Pacific Coast of United States School of Power Transit, Trans Research Consortium, but is not very popular in the US. I mean, in some way, they consider it like non-conventional. Why? Because this theory says that it's not a question when China will be the leading power, right? But the question is when exactly it will happen. And if you will see, right, the power transit starts when the new emerging power gains 80% of power of hegemon, of dominant nation, right? And it finishes when a new emerging power will get 120% of former hegemon power. And this is very dangerous period, power transit period, and usually there are some wars, etc., that could happen. How we could measure power? The scholars of power transit tradition, they refer to gross domestic product per purchasing power parity. They don't speak about military expenditure, etc. So they say if the power is rather reasonable, they would distribute their money in a rational way to spend on defense, to spend on economy, infrastructure, etc. And we could see that by 222, GDP per purchasing power parity of China was 120% of GDP of United States. So we can say that in traditional stricto sense, power transit already terminated. But what happened in 221, and it is very much underestimated, is Atlantic Charter 2.0. We remember that Atlantic Charter 1.0 was in 1941, just before the start, the first months of Second World War. And in 221, United States and UK also made a deal. So this time is not United States who is helping United Kingdom, but it is United Kingdom and I would say like with its satellites, right, British Empire 2.0, which is now helping to US to contain China. And this consortium, of course, if we consider it as one actor, is still stronger, not much, but is still stronger than China itself. Let's go further. Next slide. when I, now we have power transit, and it is very complicated period, and we have a fog of war. So nobody is telling the truth. What are your real capacity? What is real capacity of your opponent, etc. And if you will analyze American literature now, so what can we see that they because according to composite indicator of national capacity, China already dominates United States by 10% already. According to GDP, it dominates United States by 1.2 right, by 20%. But they say no, it's not important. Comparison on GDP is not important. Comparison on SING is not important. What is important is GDP per capita. So they started to create a new, I would say, a new indexes in order to create, this, to construct this narrative that China will never be as strong as United States. But I would say it is some, social engineering, some academic discourse creation, something like this, manipulation in some way. Let's go further. Next slide. One of features of current world system is what we call decoupling. For Russia, it started in 2014 when sanctions after Crimean crisis were imposed on Russia. But then in 2018, it started for China. I would say that decoupling, you understand, right, is disrupt, is the divide between Western and non-Western powers, and it is quite negative, but also it gives some, some positive impacts, because like non-Western markets now get rid of Western companies, and we have a big niche that non-Western companies could take, right? And I would say that decoupling is not only in economics, it first of all in technological sphere, but also in academic, international organization sphere, and ideological sphere. Next slide, please. When I speak about structural power, I refer to Susan Strange. She is founder of international political economy. So she defined structural power as a power to create your rules. So if you are strong enough, you create your own rules. If you are not strong enough, you obey to the rules created by those actors who are stronger than you. And she identified 4 areas of primary power structures, right? Security, which is NATO for collective West. Then it is control of finance and credit, which is IMF and World Bank. Control of production, of economies, organization of economic cooperation and development, and control of knowledge. And she says that all those 4 spheres are important equally. And then she spoke about, secondary power structures, which refer to transport, trade, energy, and welfare. Next slide, please. So now we speak more and more that some universal, organizations are not anymore universal, but they are Western-centric. In fact, all current system of international organizations is Western-centric, is US-centric. It was created in 1940s, at the end of 1940s, when United States had the largest share of world power, around 40%. Now, as I told you, there is a power differential between the US and China, so China is 10% stronger than the US. So headquarters of all these organizations are situated in Western countries. Here you could see in red all those capitals, right? And then if you will look at United Nations system, you will look at positions D1 and D2. These are positions, the highest position in UN system, the directors of departments, etc. You could see that share of Western powers is around 25% of these positions, while share of non-Western powers is just share of West 75, share of non-West just 25. Next slide, please. And what is happening right now is like non-Western powers, they are increasing their structural power. Instead of NATO, we have Shanghai Cooperation Organization, we have Common Security Treaty Organization, right? Then instead of Bretton Woods, right, China has Asia Infrastructural Investment Bank and New Development Bank. What we are missing, to my mind, first of all, is non-Western OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. For International Energy Agency, we have OPEC plus Global Gas Exporting Countries Forum. So we now should empower non-Western institutes to make a multipolar world reality, but we should not just copy Western mechanisms, right? It should not be asymmetric response, it should be asymmetrical response to Western hegemony. That's all. Thank you. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer. Thanks. Yeah, you could go to the last slide. Yeah, it was, yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I'm finished, right? So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Yeah.
Thank you, Director. Sorry, I was mute. So maybe Mr. Ma'ruf will give his response on your presentation.
I think after, yeah. I'm asking Mr. Dennis, do you have a time to wait for a moment? Mr. Leonid Savin will present.
Okay.
Do you have a time, Mr. Dennis?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Thank you for invitation. Of course, thanks a lot to Institute of Global Thinkers. And
videonya mati. Sorry, Mr. Leonid, your video still off?
Video?
Yes.
Thank you to Institute of Global Thinkers, and I think it's a very important topic because we all see the global changes and some positive and negative impacts on every nation over the globe. But I will start my speech to mention book of Giovanni Arrighi, The Long 20th Century, Money, Power and Origins of Our Times. When after mentioning that astronomical time is different than political and economical time, in this sense, some other authors thought that 20th century starts from First World War, another thought that it starts from great social revolution in Russian Empire that brings to building of the Soviet Union. And the same, I think, is similar to our contemporary moments, because the refusal of many countries to worship the West, the emergence of sovereign political will in many corners of the world, and which the West dismissively thought to be backward or barbarous, and criticism of the US neoliberal hegemony from big geopolitical actors gave rise to the effect of multipolarity. Also, the United States still has the world's largest army and uses the dollar to maintain economic dominance. It has already lost all other advantages. The world no longer orientates to the West, neither in politics, nor in science, nor in technology. Moreover, many Western imperatives such as cancel culture are simply unacceptable and are regarded as self-destructive trends. Can we see that it's now that the 21st century comes when the world's policeman has lost both legality and legitimacy? Apparently, yes. Also, those.
Your audio, please, Mr. Leonid. Your audio off.
Your is muted.
I thought that already we can say yes, that 21st century comes. And still some advocates of unipolarity try to justify dominance of the West and with so-called formula of rules-based order. That is fact, dominance of the West and trying to give those rules out for international law. And current conflicts in Ukraine, in Palestine, in many other areas, it's kind of effect that the West would like to keep the dominance in financial, in economical and political and religious sphere in many aspects, because it brings benefit to the Western oligarch system. But global change are coming and very visible. Recently, largest oil producer Saudi Arabia refused to prolong agreement with the United States to sell oil in the American dollars only. Political and economical media in the United States commented this news with a panic that Pax Americana is over. The unit, a concept has already been discussed by financial services and investment working groups inside BRICS countries and may be implemented officially during the summit this year in Russia. The unit planned to be used for traditional banking operations, that is important, as well for the newest form of digital banking. So we see that de-dollarization is growing up in many corners of the world. In more large context, especially on security issues, I would like to mention that on June 14, Russian President Vladimir Putin held a meeting with the leadership of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, at which Russia's principled position and the actual strategic course of the state on a global scale were outlined. The meeting was opened by Foreign Minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, who used a term such as Global East, which is listed together with the Global South as priority area for the Russian. If the Global South is a concept that the West also actively uses to its advantage, primarily to continue neo-colonial policy by other means, then the Global East is a relatively new concept that includes Eurasia and part of the Pacific region, with the exception of Australia and Oceania. And the president began his assessment with current situation in global and regional affairs, where he noted that more and more states are striving to strengthen sovereignty, self-sufficiency, national and cultural identity. That is very important, like counterbalance to neoliberalism ideas that always use kind of try to bring only one idea in different sectors. Mr. Putin emphasized that today the contours of multipolar and multilateral world order are being formed, and this is an objective process. It reflects cultural and civilizational diversity, which despite all attempts of artificial unification is organically inherent in people nature. And Vladimir Putin rightly noted that the desire for multipolar and more just world order is in tune with the image of the future for the vast majority of the world's countries. In this context, BRICS was mentioned, and the authorities were instructed, and representative of other ministries and presidential administration also are present on this event, to continue to work with partners to coordinate decisions in the fields of politics, security, and other areas of cooperation. And it means that Russia will be more focused on Asian region, including Indonesia. And the Western powers, led by United States, were subjected to extensive criticism because they decided that they have the right to independently determine how the world should be arranged. And the practical expression of this worldview was the project of unlimited expansion of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in space of time. Also, Russia has pointed out since the 90s the fallacy of the course chosen by elites of the West and offered constructive solutions. Such attempts at dialogue have not found any response. And instead of working out approaches that would suit all sides, the West began gross interventions in Yugoslavia, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and other places. And of course, such colored color revolutions inside of ex-Soviet states, I mean, Republic of Georgia, Republic of Ukraine, Republic of Kyrgyzia, it's also an attempt of the West to include our political systems in this region. And the current extremely dangerous state of affairs is the result of selfishness and arrogance of Western states, and Mr. Putin told. And also the collapse of Euro-Atlantic security system is obvious. Moscow offers to start from scratch. And first of all, to form a new security system for Eurasia, the largest landmass in the world in political and economic terms. To do this, it's necessary to establish a dialogue, or better to tell about polylogue, with all potential participants in such a future security system. To proceed from the fact that the future security architecture is open to all Eurasian countries that wish to participate in its creation. And Europe, whose main threat is critical and increasing almost total dependence of United States, and can also still make the right decision and be on good terms with Russia. But they would like not to be together with Russia, as we see it just now. But it's necessary to intensify the dialogue process between multilateral organizations already operating in Eurasia right now. There are the Union State of Russia and Belarus, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, Eurasian Economic Union, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Further, other influential Eurasian associations from Southeast Asia to the Middle East may join these processes in the future. ASEAN countries and some other organizations. So, collapse of global neoliberal system opens a new field for discussions and self-representations. And from my opinion, civilizational level is also very important, because some states actually are not nation states like in Europe, but civilizational states. It's very clear for India, for China, for Russia, and also for Indonesia, because Indonesia is a very big country with many different cultural diversity. And so I think that also very important for Indonesian thinkers to speak about civilization state of Indonesia. Next level that also very important for my opinion is technological. Geopolitics is increasingly being shaped by non-state actors, primarily technology companies. And while for example, Europe want to play, its company don't have the size or geopolitical clue to compete with the American and Chinese counterparts. So we see a new type of paradigm when technology companies not like foot soldiers in conflict between hostile countries, but in some sense, technology companies are also not tools in the hands of government, and they play own game and to provide own policy, provide own vision. So it's time to think of the largest technology companies as states. In some sense, it's very dangerous because it's out of control and try to influence on global decision-making process, like in the United Nations. For example, the Western actors would like to implement non-state actor for governance of internet. They develop so-called multilateralism policy when big IT companies like Facebook, like Google, like Amazon, to be like voice during the discussion on global internet problems. I think it's just one more attempt on the West to influence of policy of internet governance. Anyway, it's a trend obvious, so we should think about it and to do something. And for example, I developed a few years ago in my own terms like geek geopolitics. The word we see to hear a lot lately is a geek, which refers to someone who has a passion or even an obsession for various technological innovations. So we should pay attention that technology plays a crucial role in geopolitics. Also, this fact is often overlooked. And the development of many technologies, and for example, dichotomy between maritime, land power, dominance in the air, dominance in the space, and we see it was added in 20th centuries like important factors of geopolitics, but drivers of these factors were technological, not political. Then it was implemented in politics. So the 21st century has witnessed the appearance of new dimensions like cyberspace, which is completely artificial and constantly being improved. Therefore, has a fickle and fluid nature, but it's also extremely important for communications and information technologies. So natural determinism and different perception of the world, including the threats and some emergence, which are at the core of geopolitical thinking and strategic culture, are going nowhere in the decades to come. However, technology will have a significant impact on them, and this factor must be taken into account in risk assessment and projection for the future. And next is educational and scientific approach. Like my colleague, Mr. Dekter, already told that most educational academic system was Western-centric. We should to overcome the paradigm of modernity itself, because European modernity was the reason of European colonialism, racism, totalitarianism, including roots of First and Second World Wars. So we should think more deeper in time and just to reflect our own sovereign ideas and implement it into new theories, including theories of international relations. Still most used liberalism in international relations and realism in international relations. But I think that we should to develop our new multipolar theory of international relations. And thinkers from Indonesia also very welcome. We in Russia in our group just doing this work. And also I would to mention that a few years ago I showed books on multipolarity. It's very big research. It published in many languages, including English language, and I am studied origin of multipolarity like idea, nuclear multipolarity, contemporary moment of also studying unipolarity, of course, bipolarity, and some real politics that lead to multipolarity effects in last years. I provided to Muhammad Maruf electronic version of this book, so everyone can to read it in English language. So I will to finish now, and if you have any questions, please.
Thank you very much. Quite a little bit understanding, but I'll try to respond, yeah, as quick as possible, yeah. I will use two language so that you will never miss even single point, ya. Jadi saya akan coba untuk merespon dengan bahasa Inggris dan bahasa Indonesia sesingkat mungkin. I will try to get to the point. Okay, English first, ya. Okay, I will review what Mr. Denis Dekterev said to us that multipolar and Pancasila perspective. Of course, we are not in discussion in the context of Pancasila perspective, but two speakers try to endorse, yeah, understand what going on today with one variable to another variable. If you are focusing on a slide two, yeah, slide one is the title, slide three. Okay, I'll continue. Second slide, multipolar or new bipolarity. Jadi ini very good point from Mr. Dennis. Jadi posisi sekarang dunia itu adalah unipolar, ya. Sebelumnya bipolar, gitu kan. Kalau bipolar itu power itu dibagi menjadi dua, 25%, 25%. Sisanya the rest of Uni Soviet dan Rusia. Soviet Union dan Amerika. Jadi 25%, 25%. Tapi begitu bipolar collapse, ya, Uni Soviet hilang sejak 1991. Nah, Federasi Rusia kan mulai 1991. Kemudian muncul just one, ya, unipolar. Nah, unipolar ini power dunia dari keseluruhan power. Jadi maksudnya power itu adalah kekuatan yang bisa dikuantifikasi. Itu 50%. Jadi kekuatan dunia dengan sistem unipolar itu 50%. So the world can be quantified, ya, 50% for unipolar. So now 50%. But what exactly mean 50% now? Now changing because of emerge of multipolarity. Jadi sekarang itu emerge. Cuman muncul dari munculnya multipolar itu sejak kapan? Banyak teori, ya. Banyak teori mengatakan sejak Putin naik. Sejak Putin naik. Ada yang bilang sejak runtuhnya Uni Soviet. Ya, tadi Mbak Mila sempat bilang sama saya itu sejak Boris Yeltsin. Actually no, ya. Boris Yeltsin is a part of the past, ya. Itu figure yang kira-kira untuk sekarang itu menjadi problem bagi pecahnya Uni Soviet. It's not a part of multipolar. Jadi multipolar itu sejak kira-kira Putin naik. Kalau paling kuat analisanya itu sejak kiprahnya 2014. Ya, semenjak Poroshenko itu diambil alih kira-kira lah oleh kelompok Western ini. Begitu. Nah, kemudian gagasan multipolar itu juga muncul 1999 ketika bridge muncul. Awalnya bridge itu cuman economic, that's economic align. Bridge is economic align. But because of the power, ya power itu kan banyak, ya. Power itu militer, military power, economic power, discourse power. Nah, tadi nanti di slide ketiga dijelasin itu. Oke, so kita masuk ke slide ketiga. We move to third slide, but in the second slide, this is very interesting. Mr. Dennis has power over B insofar as he can make B do something that B would not otherwise do. Jadi kalau kelompok unipolar yang diwakili oleh Barat ini melakukan apa saja, itu kira-kira lawannya, opposite-nya itu tidak bisa melakukan. Kira-kira gitulah. Kalau kelompok Barat itu bisa mendekati perbatasan Rusia secara militer, ya, dengan menggunakan Ukraina sebagai basis, ya, basis daerahnya, maka Uni Soviet, Federasi Rusia tidak serta-merta bisa menempatkan kekuatan politiknya di perbatasan Amerika. Nah, terakhir mungkin ada perkembangan ya, krisis Kuba, ya, second crisis of Cuba, Mr. Leonid will be understand as maybe is a response because NATO Western power close strategically use Ukraine border with Russia. From Russia perspective, itu adalah very existential threat. Jadi betul-betul mengancam keamanan. Tapi the Western don't understand that. Nah, jadi soal hidup mati ketika buat so-called invasion, buat so-called existential threat itu betul-betul mengancam jutaan orang Rusia yang berada di Federasi Rusia, kira-kira gitulah. Oke ya, kemudian kita masuk kepada slide yang ke 1, 2, 3. Coba dilihat 1, 2, 3, 4 nih. Slide 4, Mr. Dennis said and write about composite indicator tradisional since Cold War ya. Jadi sejak Perang Dingin. Nah, apa yang ditulis sama Mr. Dennis? Composite Index of National Capability. Tapi dia menulisnya itu sejak 1963. Ya, kalau Perang Dingin itu kan sejak kira-kira pertama Soviet kan gabung ya, sekutu dengan Amerika. Setelah itu ya, setelah 45, 46 ke sini kemudian menjadi Cold War. Nah, di sini ditulisnya sejak 63. Oke, berarti ini hitungannya sejak 63. CINC, Composite Index of National Capability. Apa sih ukurannya itu, dikuantifikasinya? Total population rate, urban population rate, iron and steel production rate. So in the context of ISPR, iron and steel production, before 1895. So maybe Mr. Dennis would like to explain us more accurately with the current situation. Yeah, energy, iron and steel production rate. Maybe right now is gas. Yeah, and then energy consumption rate, ya, military expenditure rate, and military personnel rate. Biasanya orang itu ngitung kekuatan politik militer itu ya personal, military expenditure, jadi budget yang dikeluarkan. Ketika suatu negara mengeluarkan budget katakanlah tertinggi, dia dihitungnya memiliki kekuatan militer tertinggi. Itu kan hard power, ya kan? Nah, dengan teknologi itu tentunya berubah ya. Kemudian slide selanjutnya power transit to world system. Jadi hitungannya ini di grafiknya tuh ada power, ada world, ada China, ya. Selalu dihitungnya tuh GDP, ya, GDP. Nah, the question for Mr. Dennis is because China can beat, ya, United States economically. Why NATO? The question is why NATO make war with Russia first, not China? If it is a very valuable variable ya. Jadi kalau variabelnya itu betul-betul karena GDP, bukankah Cina itu tertinggi ya di atasnya Amerika? Berarti kan pikiran kita akan mengatakan harusnya Amerika, kelompok Barat itu menganggap Cina threat, ancaman yang lebih nyata daripada Russia. We could think that United States should take China as more threat than Russia. Why NATO make war first in Ukraine, not make war in Taiwan? That's the question. Kemudian selanjutnya hegemony through discourse. Jadi kalau kita baca hegemony itu kan teori-teori Marxis lah kira-kira gitu ya. Tapi ini langsung masuk ke GDP. Nah, pengantarnya sebenarnya harusnya masuk masuk definisi multipolar dulu ya. Oke, langsung ke slide yang deglobalization and decoupling ya. US NATO, jadi ini face a face ya, face a face. Jadi langsung opposite ya. Jadi narasinya, analisanya itu Western non Western. Jadi yang dimaksud Western itu American and Europe, apa Western Europe ya. Jadi Eropa Barat dan Amerika yang dimaksud Barat. Di luar itu adalah dihitungnya bukan Barat, gitu. Jadi Eropa Timur bukan Barat dalam konteks apa? Dalam konteks diskusi kita hari ini. Oke. Kemudian selanjutnya structure power nih. Ini yang menarik nih dari Susan Strange nih. Strain defines structured power as the ability to decide how to do something from framework within which state related to each other, related to people, related to business. Structured power is the power to shape and determine a structure of the global political economy with which other state, their politic. Nah, pertama, their political institution. It is coherent with the Mr. John Mearsheimer said that liberal democracy, ya, liberal democracy is the first foundation of the West. And second, integration with international institution. So Miss Susan put a political institution first, and then economic enterprise. Economic enterprise meaning economic institution, and not least their scientists and other professional must operate. Jadi yang lainnya. Jadi intinya adalah ada dua. Jadi Barat itu menggunakan strategi pertama adalah bagaimana mengimpus, ya, mengimpus ataupun memperkenalkan demokrasi liberal itu dipakai di seluruh dunia dengan cara arbiter, mana suka. Begitu negaranya ini penting untuk liberal demokrasi, ya dipakai itu. Tapi begitu monarki menguntungkan, enggak. Ya, seperti Arab Saudi, Emirat, Qatar, Bahrain, eh, kelompok Barat tidak memperkenalkan agar itu diubah sistemnya. Tidak. Jadi sifatnya itu apa ya, mana suka, kira-kira gitu. Yang pertama adalah liberal demokrasi, yang kedua adalah mengintegrasikan dengan institusi internasional. Oke, a strain identify for area international politics with structure power operate, control security mechanism using NATO, control of finance and credit, control of production, control creation and dissemination of knowledge. Nah, yang terakhir penting juga. Jadi sekolah yang kita bikin ini adalah bagian dari cara memahami bahwa knowledge itu penting. Ya, bagian dari power. Kemudian yang terakhir ya, international organization itu apa sih? UN, United Nations. So we will ask to Mr. Dennis and Mr. Leonid about international organization UN, ya, United Nation. Because United Nation in the first beginning established to avoid the catastrophe. But right now what we call non-Western, okay, Shanghai Cooperation Bridge tried to make international economic organization, but not yet military axis, military proxy, military align. But I think for lead information from Mr. Leonid said about what Mr. Putin addressed, that Mr. Dukin also, I heard the latest his statement that Mr. Putin will do asymmetrically. Ya, jika Barat bisa mempersenjatai Ukraina dengan nuklir atau negara yang lainnya dengan nuklir, so counter asimetriknya adalah kelompok yang dimaksud non Barat ini juga bisa menggunakan kebijakan yang sama. So non-Western, ya, Russia Federation, ya, can use like Cuba, ya, like in Middle East countries, use and empowering with the nuclear capability. So it is asymmetric, and what we call it is potential for World War III. And then the last, ya, ini sudah umum ya, Bretton Woods Institution, NATO, Statistik Ekonomi, IAEA, ini Anda sudah tahu semua. Yang terakhir soal Pancasila, I think I want to inform Mr. Leonid and Mr. Dennis, what is Pancasila? Multipolar is not ideology, a certain ideology endorsed by Russia. It is like, for me, it's like a discourse to understand the situation, respond the aggressivity of NATO, etc., etc. So it is kind of discourse, yeah. It is kind of platform. But Pancasila, from right now, mostly understand that Pancasila is an ideology, as the best state. What is the relation Pancasila and multipolarity? Two of them is not contradict each other, but not identical. Yeah, because it is pure come from our founding father, Mr. Soekarno, endorsed Pancasila, 5 guiding principle. Yeah, God ahead, humanity, unity, and then justice. Yeah, kerakyatan yang dipimpin. So the people directed by the wisdom of leadership and social justice. The 5 guidance. Pancasila. Pancasila mean Pans itu bahasa Persia ya. Pans exactly Persian language. Pans. Pan yaitu se cohor pans. 1 2 3 4 5. Jadi 5. 5 guidance principle. It is ideology. So if multipolarity want, every countries should strengthen the sovereignty in any kind of dimension. Jadi multipolar itu ingin itu setiap negara itu memperkuat kedaulatan, kekuatan politiknya, budayanya, teknologinya, pikirannya menjadi independen. So it is coherent ya, sesuai dengan spirit dari Pancasila itu sendiri. Not contradict, but capitalism itself is the most common enemy of the human being. Jadi kapitalisme itu sendiri adalah musuh bersama. I want to make short statement. Jadi kata Pak Karno, intinya bukan imperialisme dan kolonialisme. Intinya di kapitalisme. Dengan konsep manusia human interest. Jadi konsep manusia kapitalisme itu kan human interest. Manusia itu memiliki interest yang tidak terbatas sehingga dia dalam memenuhi kebutuhan interest yang tidak terbatas itu dia expand keluar. Jadilah imperialisme, jadilah kolonialisme. So according to Soekarno said that the problem is not imperialist. The problem is not colonialist. The problem is capitalism. Because inside of capitalism, there is a concept of human being, a human interest concept, that human being very greedy, always expand to other region. So that's become imperialist and colonialism. Jadi intinya di situ. Dan I think Russia Federation now is anti-colonialism, like used to be, and if the position anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism, so that's coherent with our base state ideology Pancasila. It's not contradict. So that's why I think we can share common value Pancasila and multipolarity. But again Pancasila, again capitalism. Okay, thank you very much.
Oke, thank you, Mr. Ma'ruf. Maybe mungkin para peserta ada yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan, dipersilahkan. Bisa mengangkatkan tangan.
Bahasa Indonesia juga nggak apa-apa, nanti diterjemahin.
Ya, silahkan, Bung Evan. Silahkan.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the change. Yudhistira and I'm from Executive Committee Daerah Istimewa Yogyakarta. And I think some of us will be happy if the system of the world become multipolar. But I think we should look the negative impact. If the world become multipolar, will anarchy system will be back? Because in my opinion, when the world have a single authority, or it means US become the most powerful state in the world, it will make a dependence for another state. And so it will make a peace, like a stick and carrot theory. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Who will reply to Mr. Evan?
I am ready to reply to comments by the third orator, but also to comment about multipolar world. I'm ready.
Okay, please, Mr. Dennis.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, I would start by what you terminated is by Panchashila, right? I highly appreciate Panchashila as a concept of Indonesian theory of international relations, and I highly appreciate Bandung Conference, which was in 1955. Bandung Conference and the spirit of Bandung, it was very strong. It was from 1955 up to 1975. What I mean by Bandung spirit, that global South countries become stronger, they are self-reliant, they industrialize, etc., etc. When Bandung spirit perished, it perished, unfortunately, at the end of 1975, at the end of 1970s, 1980s. What happened? These were structural adjustment programs by Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, and International Monetary Fund. So we could say that it was a kind of recolonization of global South, but not by, nation metropolis like France, etc., but it was collective colonialism by Bretton Woods institutions. And right now we are in, I would say, we have the second wave of Bandung spirit. Like global South nations, Russia, like civilization, right? We could speak here about civilizations. We are like 6 civilizations, right? 7 civilizations, right? Western civilization is just one civilization, and it is just a question of, coordination of efforts. Speaking about anti-colonialism, etc., I strongly agree with you, right? That Russia is also on anti-colonial positions. We are on one side. You remember in 1960, when Declaration on Decolonization was adopted, Soviet Union, in fact, proposed a much more radical draft of this declaration. So now I would say it is the second part, because before it was decolonization, formal decolonization. Right now we speak about neocolonialism, right? Western neocolonialism, because, like, in fact, not many things changed in economic sphere, for example. You see, speaking about multipolar world, it's not good, etc., etc. But the student who asks this question, he needs mental decolonization. He needs to pass mental decolonization, right? What I mean, because you are embedded in that Western-centric discourse. You are strongly embedded. You think that it is the only one and is the best, etc. But I could give you an example, right? Bipolar system, Soviet Union and United States was rather strong, and there were no huge conflicts during that period. In 1990s, when unipolar world came in Africa, there was a revival of many dangerous conflicts. So we could not say that unipolar world is, like any social science, like especially international relations, is both science and ideology. It has very strong normative dimension. So, like, if you believe that hegemonism is the best, but you were imposed to believe like this, right? But it's very difficult to say that, to tell you, to impose you another point of view. You are indoctrinated in hegemonistic ideology, right? That is the point. Then speaking about SINC, right, composite indicator of national capacities, I send you in chat the link to methodology And the speaker is right, because before it was iron. Iron was till the beginning.
Hello?
Of 20th century. It starts from 19th century, 1812. You see, it's for more than 2 centuries, it gives indicators. So till the beginning of 20th century, they used the steel, iron. And then in 20th century, they started to use steel. And the very last question, why they started by Russia, because like I would give 2 reasons. They consider that Russia is easier task to finish with Russia and with Iran, and then to start to solve, as Americans think, the most difficult task with China. So like when they would start to solve the task with China, all like China allies should be eliminated before, right? In order to help them to solve the problem uniquely with China. And then there is another reason, decoupling between US and China is very complicated thing. We have technological decoupling, but right now there is almost no economic decoupling. So what Americans propose to China, they propose a limited competition, right? Controlled rivalry. I mean, like United States will impose spheres where they could be rivals with China, while at other spheres they cooperate. They want to earn money, etc. But the problem is that every day, like, there are positive, there are absolute and relative gains, right, in international relations theories, etc. So every day, United States gets absolute gains from cooperation with China, but in relative gains, China gets more. So every day, China is becoming stronger and stronger in the current global system. United States are also becoming stronger. They earn money, right, and they like this money, right. But relative gains goes to China. That is the point. So there is, to my mind, very strong lobby, right, around Biden, etc., right, who are who find seducing, right, those absolute gains United States are getting from cooperation with China. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Mungkin Mr. Ivan mau menanggapi kembali. Mr. Ivan, is it clear enough?
Maybe I still don't understand what Mr. Dennis talk about. In my opinion, if we see United States right now, it's like they are the police of the world system. And if we look in World War I and World War II, state is multipolar and it will make a war, and it means anarchy, right? So if China or Russia or another state will be stronger too, can the world become anarchy, not like in the economy, but in the military too, like that?
Mungkin bisa diteruskan diskusinya, bisa ngeblend sama pertanyaan selanjutnya ya. Sama Mr. Leonid juga kami. Mbak Mila masih nggak?
I also will comment that multipolarity is not a system of anarchy. It is the common view of the followers of unipolarity, because they afraid the rise of other center of powers and center of decision making. Actually, there is United Nations. and all representative of nations come and to discuss on very important issues. But we see that because the mostly Western countries to block decisions inside of United States, it's not possible to achieve a resolution of United Nations, like state of Palestine, for example, and to finish blockade against Cuba. Only two countries support blockade against Cuba, United States and Israel. All countries over the globe are strongly against the blockade of Cuba. And we see that there is kind of a global club, but because of the Western, I repeat, the Western influence, we cannot to achieve many decisions that will be good for nations and the people. So the problem mostly comes from some Western powers and of course of United States. And where will be more center of responsibilities, and especially for regional responsibilities, nobody can to influence in negative sense on these regions. In Eurasia, it will be like actors like Russia, Iran, India, China, maybe European Union countries, and in Southeast Asia also, India, China, Indonesia, other powers, and African countries. I think that the main reason of multipolarity is that people can to follow own destiny and not to follow some orders from any other powers.
Mbak Siva itu?
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Dennis. Actually, she here. Oh, but it's okay. Well, maybe one of you guys can answer my questions. So we talk about balance of power, and the first speaker, they said about balance of power, and in balancing power, every state there seek for alliance, many states involved, and they will work together. And my question is, how can they reinforce or how can they strengthen their sovereignty while the world system force them to balancing their power and make an ally with another state, let's say superpower country like America, like United States? If it becomes the most powerful and it can intervene with foreign policy of one of the state that they are one of their alliance, how can they still strengthen or reinforce their sovereignty in that system? Thank you.
Mr. Dennis, are you with us?
Mr. Dennis?
It's a question for Mr. Dekterev, I think, because he
Lost
was mentioned.
internet. His internet lost, I think, Mr. Leonid. Okay, I will respond so that Mr. Leonid can reply, and we waiting for Mr. Dennis response. So I've illustrated very simple. When Syria attack by Western bloc used with the proxy, Arab Saudi, Emirat, Qatar, and Bahrain, and also Turkey to topple the government of Bashar Assad, we can ask, is it kind of multipolarity or unipolarity? The fact is Russia and Iran involved. So that's why multipolarity in this case become a normative, so that Siva can understand this illustration. Okay, so there is a gap, and also I think Mr. Evan, so there is a gap between normatively and factuality. Normatively, according to me, I am accept multipolarity concept, but in factuality, again, when Indonesia attacked by superpower, whether Russia, China, or United States, what country will defend Indonesia? Factuality, not normatively. We have a Pancasila normatively, not contradict with multipolarity. So this kind of illustration, same with Mr. John Mearsheimer. John Mearsheimer understand multipolarity with the critical understanding, that would be a war in multipolarity, because the pole is everywhere, not only in unipolar or bipolar, but changing into multipolarity. So how can bridge can strengthen Indonesia? Militarily, de facto Indonesia is a part of NATO Pacific. We are close enough. 80% our military spending buy from the West. So how can Russia and maybe bridge defend Indonesia? In the same time, we have a contradict. Yeah, our state constitution contradict with the value of the West. Pancasila is, I think, contradict with some certain of the West. Okay, we accept like liberal democracy. Indonesia is now a liberal democracy. We are accept international institution, like Mr. Denny said to us. Yeah, Indonesia is a used by a liberal democracy. We are liberal democracy. We are integrated with international economic institution. Yeah, we are integrated military, but our value is contradict with the Indonesian policy. So that's why Indonesia have a problem with our past value. Yeah, Mr. Dennis talk about the strength of the Dasasila Bandung, five value of 1945 common platform of non-enlightenment movement. Maybe Mr. Leonid can respond. I repeat again, Mr. John Mearsheimer, pessimist about multipolarity. John Mearsheimer said that in assumption of liberal democracy, each countries, yeah, if those countries liberal democracy, so the conflict will be reconciled, and they will no countries attack each other. That assumption of liberal democracy. But the problem in the factuality, the fact the war itself endorsed by liberal democracy. Superpower, the United States always waging war in many countries. It contradicts with their value, liberal democracy. And other thing is realism. Realism assumption is every country has sovereignty. So the nature of the politics itself, each country will face the war itself because of the nature of the politic. Yeah, like Hobbian. Thomas Hobbes said that every human being is selfish, every human being attack each other. That's the nature of human being. So the nature of politics make each country will face the war. And secondly, the structures of the politics each country, nationalism, whether chauvinism or not, each country when will be attacked by outsider, they will face the invader. So two kind of war. So maybe Mr. Leonard can reply. What's my comment? Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions to discuss interconnections between neoliberal, liberal theories, realism, and nationalism, because originally it rises from modernity epoch, from Westphalia Agreement, and we see that realism theory more refers to Westphalia Agreement, and because the state should be sovereign and to protect our interest, but by fact, Westphalia Agreement also have one serious problem, because they cut out religious identity. And after Protestant Catholic wars in Europe, the agreement not to mention religious influence, and just to discuss like statement between each other. So it leads to rise of realist theory. But in fact, we mostly all have religious concerns, even in a European country. Religious, metaphysical, difference on the worldview, on eternity, on death, on life, on God, etc. So it's one serious problem. Liberalism also based on kind of material studies. It's materialism. So John Mearsheimer also start from this point when he proposed a conflict situation during multipolar world order. But if our mind will be changed, if we bring some kind of multipolarity theory, we'll bring our cultural identity, our religion ideas, metaphysical ideas to this block of passive negotiations between states, between civilization. I think it's possible to resolve any crisis and any conflict in the world. Concerning Syria, Bashar Assad asked Russia about assistance during the situation of crisis. It was the reasons why Russia assisted to Bashar Assad and Syrian people. If Indonesia in any problem situation will ask Russia to assist, I think there will be no doubt that Moscow will give you any kind of assistance. It's also the reason that Mr. Putin recently visited Democratic Republic of Korea and Vietnam and signed a new kind of agreement between two countries. And also we can to mention that Vietnam is not very friendly to China, and Russia and China are very good partners for the moment. So it seems that Russia can be kind of mediator between different actors in Asian region, not only in Near East. So I think that more Poles and more actors, responsible actors, what is very important, because of course United States and some European countries still powerful, but they are irresponsible. And when will be more responsible actors in such kind of international clubs like BRICS or Shanghai's Cooperation Organization, it will be more useful to achieve peace on the global scale.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Bahmid, is it clear enough?
Yeah, it's clear enough. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have another question from the chat. I'm Ricky from East Nusa Tenggara. Lately, we have been shocked by the term proxy war. Is there a connection between multipolar and this incident that triggered the war public? What about Indonesia's position as a sovereign country based on Pancasila in facing this matter? Do you still maintain a relation with the Western Bloc, or do you have another strategy? We know that together our economic system is heading toward neoliberalism. Okay, who will answer to Rifki?
I think I will respond. Okay, Indonesia historically have a pattern, yeah, non-alignment movement, nor west nor east, yeah, nor United States nor Soviet Union. Right now, maybe Russia Federation. We are in between. Always, yeah, always endorse non-alignment. Non-alignment. It means that we are not in the proxy term. Okay, it is kind of normatively, yeah, normatively, but factually, no, bebas aktif, ya, kita bebas, ya, bebas kemana saja, tapi juga aktif kemana saja, ya, we are active to the Western Bloc. Of course, we are in a public, in media, never say that Indonesia is a part of NATO, never say part of Western Bloc. No, not at all. But the factuality, we are Western Bloc, of course, yeah. So, according to me, we have to maintaining our value, our indigenous value, Pancasila itself. Now Pancasila become disappear because of liberal diskursus, ya, diskursus liberal demokrasi itu membuat Pancasila jadi hilang, ya. Jadi logika liberal demokrasi itu adalah unended logic, ya. Jadi infinite logic. Jadi semua argumentasi dikembalikan pada every human being, every citizen. Lo terserah mau interpretasi Pancasila terserah setiap individu. It is anarchy. So Indonesia has a Pancasila itself has an assumption that Indonesia have foundation of state. Pancasila has a foundation. This is assumption, not back to the citizenship. Every citizenship has authority, not like that. That of course there is a certain person understanding well about Pancasila, which is Sukarno itself. Of course, yeah, he has a inventor. He has what I say a good rhetoric, good rhetoric, good understanding, well known about West and the East conflict, and he won Indonesia not in the part of whether West or East, because according to Sukarno, and that time, Soviet Union is the same with the United States. We want to both close, yeah, enough to United States, and at the same time to Soviet Union. Soviet Union, of course, contribute to Indonesia to make Indonesia independent international forum, yeah, and also contribute to back Irian Jaya, Jayapura back to Indonesia. We have a good historically about our power, our military power. But after 1967, I think we are close enough to Western Bloc until now. That's make us as like our job to autocritic for ourselves. So the question, what about Indonesian position as sovereign country based on Pancasila and facing this matter? Do you still maintain relation with the Western Bloc? Or do you have another strategy? We know that together our economic system is handling toward liberalism, neoliberalism. Okay, Indonesia is neoliberalism. It doesn't mean that if we are openly with the discourse of multipolarity, it doesn't mean that we are again people of Western. We have to separate between the ruler of Western Bloc and the people of the Western. We never have a problem with the people of United States. We have never problem with the people of UK, of France, of Australia. But the problem is the ruler who imposed, yeah, a policy with the what I call arbiter, mana suka, yeah. United States impose sanction to Russia, but not impose sanction to Israel. It is injustice. It is again our normative constitution, our ideology. So, what about Indonesia position as sovereignty country? We have to strengthen our sovereignty with any kind of discourse that relevant and not contradictory with our value, not based on the fact that what I say. Okay, let's see that now superpower is in the hand, is still in the hand of the United States. We have to follow what the United States want. We don't want to get risk to be sanctioned by United States. That's the wrong thinking. So we have to try and consistent to our constitution, not in the real fact, yeah, in the real fact of superiority. We follow the constitution, not superiority. So in this context, if multipolarity is not contradict with our value, we have to open. Just like in liberal democracy, we are open with the liberal democracy. So that's why we are not open with the bridge discourse. Where we are not open with the multipolarity discourse. So it's not just attitude. For me, it's not just attitude. We have to be Indonesian as it is, as our founding father wants. Yeah, the spirit of Indonesia is to be strengthened in a kind of dimension. That's the spirit. So for me, we are openly, and there is a issue if we are close enough to bridge. So that's why we are anti-Western. Not at all. It's not automatically. We are still have a relation with the West, with the people of the West. It is nature of the human being. Yeah, but we are never blocked. Yeah, we have never blocked to be part. And at the last, if Indonesia part of bridge is not indicated is part of the Western, part of again Western bloc. Not at all. It is a matter of choice, yeah, national interest, and of course not contradict with our value, yeah, our constitution.
About Indonesian position, of course, we respect the policy of foreign country. Actually, Russia follow position of non-intervention in domestic affairs. And from position of classical European liberalism, of course, any ideas are welcome. But problem is that the Western liberalism now is not kind of original classical liberalism. They reject all others idea, conservative ideas and ideas from other point of the globe, religious idea, etc. So contemporary neoliberal order is very dangerous in this sense because it's totalitarian by its ideology. And of course, Russia will respect any position of Indonesia and what kind of position they will use on global scale. And what I just would like to mention that historically the role of Indonesia was very useful for the rise of multipolarity because of movement of non-alignment was a kind of precursor of multipolarity itself.
Sepertinya poin dari tentang kekuatan perang multipolarity dan Pancasila ini adalah gagasan yang muncul untuk melawan common enemy atau musuh yang sama, yaitu kediktatoran otoritarianisme Amerika, dunia Barat, yang banyak memberikan serangan-serangan demi keuntungannya, seperti support mereka terhadap Israel misalnya. Dan semangat dari multipolarity ini justru untuk menghargai, menghormati keindependensian setiap negara dan bersatu padu untuk saling membantu. Sehingga manakala salah satu anggota dari negara multipolar ini mendapat ancaman, maka negara-negara yang lainnya akan menjadi satu tubuh untuk tolong-menolong. Ini cocok dengan semangat gotong royong. Ya, sepertinya itu kesimpulan yang bisa saya buat. Saya kembalikan kepada Mr. Ma'ruf untuk memberi penutup.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe closing statement, maybe Mr. Leonard would you like to close statement. After Mr. Leonard, I will give a close statement. Mr. Leonard, please.
Yes, thank you for interesting discussion and very good questions. I think we should more to interact to understand position and ideas of each other, and we'll be glad to participate in the future sessions and like speaker or like listener, and we'll try to bring you more interesting Russian speakers and our colleagues from abroad to discuss the topics of multipolarity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Leonid. I want to close statement that the war itself, according to Sukarno, is expansion of politics. Okay, but according to me, the outcome of the war determine politics. Okay, bagi orang Palestina mungkin perang dengan Israel itu adalah ekspansi dari politik ya untuk memerdekakan negaranya. Tapi hasil perang antara kelompok perlawanan termasuk Hamas dengan Israel itu menentukan apakah Palestina akan segera merdeka atau tidak. Jadi war is not absolutely wrong. I said again, war is not absolutely wrong. God itself not let human being not war at all. No. Our spirit is to what I say, untuk menghindari ya, avoid the war. But if the enemy come to the state, I said state, yeah. If the enemy come to the state, so what the state do? It is a modern product. State is the modern product of history. So the state have to do something. So state have to deter whether not chauvinism or not. State must deter. So the war cannot avoid absolutely. Jadi perang itu tidak sama sekali tidak bisa sama sekali dihilangkan. Tapi juga tidak bisa sama sekali kita itu menentukan perang. That's problem. The war become a problem because only superpower can determine when and where the war come and the outcome. Said the evil thing of the war is if the world, with the member of the United States, only superpower unipolarity can determine where the war, where the war occurs and the outcome of the war, that would be injustice forever. I said forever will be injustice. So the war itself have two dimensions. Will performance, will assist justice and make injustice. So I choose, if there is a war in Indonesia, it will be assist to justice, not as part of injustice. That's my close statement, and I hope that multipolarity, if there is World War III, if there is World War III, the multipolarity axis will stand on the right side with the right value. So that's why if we die because of that war, we are in the right path, not in the wrong path. I hope so. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Mr. Dekterev, Mr. Safin, and Mr. Ma'ruf. And we really had a good meeting right now. I hope we can do other talk about multipolarity to know it better. And maybe that's enough for today.
Mbak Lia, satu lagi lupa saya tadi. Okay. One more thing, just 1 minute. Jadi ada gagasan dari multipolarity yang bagus. I see in Russia because I have been in Russia before the multipolarity conference. So right now multipolarity have a program to strengthen the traditionality. Back to tradition, back to family, strengthen the family. It is coherent with our mission, protect family, happy with the family, happy with tradition, religion and right, suku, agama, ras itu diperkuat, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Nggak ada kontradiksi dengan multipolar, I think. So we have to, kita harus pergi ke Rusia nih, LMND harus melihat langsung Rusia. Begitu juga dengan Amerika, kita lihat dengan mata kita sendiri. Tidak hanya sekedar diskusi. We have to go to Russia, Mr. Leonid. So that's why we see the multipolarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone. Okay, that's all for today. See you another time. Bye-bye.